A huge thank you to everyone who is here on time. Lots of folks in the comments section, lots of folks out there in the community. We really appreciate you joining our March community virtual meetup. I have tons of folks on the call today, as usual. These are our internal folks today. No external, which is a little bit saddening, but that's okay. We're going to get through it. And I know that Chris and Jason have fantastic topics to cover and something I think a lot of folks are going to be interested in. So you want to stick around for that. Behind the scenes, though, the other two individuals, Mark Booth, Domo VP of Community, and Anna Yardley, our Domo Community Manager, will be obviously engaging with you in the chat, answering all of your questions, taking on the role of managing something that I can clearly not even look at right now because all it does is just keep going like this. So Mark, thank you. Anna, thank you very much. We have an exciting agenda for this March virtual meetup. I have a few announcements that I'd like to get to before. I know a lot of folks are like, get to the good stuff, but unfortunately, I do have to promote just some of the things that we're doing in community. This is a community meetup. We want you guys to be engaged with some of the content that we have going on, and we're excited to tell you all about it. And also our stars of the show that I've teased already, Chris Willis and Jason Longhurst, going to talk about dashboard designs today. Super excited to have them, and obviously thank them for their time, valuable time here right before Domopalooza. If you've been with us before, you know, I just saw something I'm going to get to in just a second. A few minutes before, as you know, if you're engaging in the chat, this is the only way to get yourself entered to win custom Domo AirPods Pro. So make sure you're commenting in the chat. Tell us where you're from. Tell us what your Dojo username is. Get the conversation flowing. Anything you really like, throw it out in the chat. This is kind of our only way to engage with you. So continue to do those things. We really love it. Teresa McLean, go Hoosiers. I love it already. We've got lots of comments happening in there. Also, our next meetup. This is something a lot of people said, hey, what's going on in the next meetup? I'm just going to turn this thing over to the data science team and let them take over the next community meetup. They're going to be connecting and collaborating with you to talk about data reduction techniques. They've got a customer that's going to be coming on with them. It's going to be awesome. You can register today by the QR code. I will also be linking when I turn it over to Chris and Jason in the chat. Mark already did it for me. I knew he'd be on it 100%. You can go to that link and register today for the April virtual meetup. It is happening on April 20th. So excited to continue to do these as we get more people involved and increase the engagement we have with you through community. Obviously, the live streams are happening. We're having the monthly meetups. We've got community blogs. This is just all part of it. We are ramping up the exciting times we're having in community, as well as trying out some new things. And if they don't work, they don't work. We'll try something different next week. But really excited to get started with our friends here. Chris Willis. It's always exciting when we have eStaff with us, the Chief Design Officer here at Domo Inc., as well as Jason Longhurst, the Director of UX Design at Domo as well. I am going to, at this moment, get rid of Anna Yardley and Mark Booth as they kind of go behind the curtain and manage the chat. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you on doing that for me. And I will turn it over to Jason and Chris. Thank you, guys. Obviously, we've got a lot going on, and we really appreciate you being a part of this webinar, the virtual meetups that we're doing in community.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie, and thanks to Mark and Anna for putting this together. So we're really excited. This is our first one, so hit us up with as many questions, comments as you can. Today, as you guys probably know, probably why you're here, we do a lot with dashboards, and we've seen a lot of dashboards, and Eddie and the team thought it might be useful to share some of those findings with you. So with that, before I do that, I want to introduce Jason Longhurst, who's one of our players on the UX team. Jason, maybe just tell us everybody a little bit about yourself, and then I'll pick up on some of our design secrets.
Cool. Well, I'm Jason. I've been at Domo about 7 years, and worked on a lot of features on my way through that process. So if you've used dataset views or the data center or the JSON no-code connector, worked on all of that as a designer. And now I manage all of the kind of core BI and analytics experiences. So everything from collecting data, transforming data, and visualizing and storytelling. So just really excited to be here with the legend that is Chris and talk to you all about dashboard design and hopefully give you all some principles and then show you a couple of quick techniques and tips. And then Chris, I've got a little sneak peek to share as well. So stick around for that.
A pre-Domo Palooza sneak peek, huh?
Pre-Domo Palooza sneak
peek. Great. All right. This is gonna be good. So Jason and myself, for those who don't know, I'm the Chief Design Officer. I've been at Domo since the very beginning. So being able to come here today and chat and share some of our experiences and some of the questions, comments, or ideas from the community is really important. So I'm glad we can do this. So let's dive right into it. When it comes to dashboards, I think it's clear, based on the thousands of dashboards we've seen, that there are some pretty pervasive myths. Just today, a friend posted something on LinkedIn, Tobias Van Schneider. He was one of the first designers, directors of design at Spotify. Looks like he thinks he found the origin of the word dashboard. I'm like, I think in many cases that's not too far off. It's that thing that separates you from the horse, in this case. And I am still surprised to this day just how much has been talked about, how much controversy there's been around like best practices in design around dashboards. And in many ways, how we're starting to see ideas of dashboards and dashboard design morph into new kinds of things like apps. We're not going to talk about apps today, but we're going to talk about, of all of that, what can you do to up-level your dashboard game? And I thought it'd be useful to start with just some things that I hear a lot, see a lot, and I'm sure Jason does too, is, ultimately, which, that's a good question. Yeah, which one of these dashboard myths do we hear the most? Gosh, I think more color is better, more fancy, and right close behind that is just make it pretty. That's usually the directive, and that directive gets translated into more color, more details, more visuals. If it's about data and data is important, less white space. These are all things that pile together to make really less than optimal sort of dashboard experiences. I would just say, as someone in this for a while, there is a healthy rethinking of dashboards that's going on, and we should encourage that. But dashboard is a metaphor. The idea of the dashboard here that you have, like that Tobias showed, as just a separator between you and what's ahead of you in this case, is a metaphor that I think was useful to a certain degree, right? Dashboard of a car. That's why we did this, right? It's like, I want to know if I'm running low on gas or how fast I'm going, etc. And that was a useful metaphor. I think it's safe to say this metaphor has maybe, lived long beyond its usefulness. So we're excited to see and help others kind of create new kinds of ways of creating data products and data experiences. But the whole point about, colors and pie charts and bar charts, it's a lot more subtle. And I would say one of the big challenges is that we're given all of these tools, right? And we're also given a lot of requests from different folks within our organizations, but there's very little sort of roadmap or understanding or expectation set other than I'll know it when I see it. And that's a terrible position to be in. So what we're going to try to do today is talk about how do we sort of get out of our own way in that regard, and how do we focus on what's really the most valuable thing. And I would suggest that, even though I've got design in my title, design is not the most important thing to start with when it comes to dashboards. What really is important is making sure you have the right kind of data and you're designing for the right kind of purpose. And Mark Booth and I were actually talking about this a little bit before. I think there's also a misunderstanding that just because you have data, the story is already obvious. And I think anyone who's done this for any time realizes that's not the case. There are potentially many stories, and not all of those are great. But story is only important if you understand who you're telling the story to. So starting with audience, is by far the most critical thing. And I think oftentimes this is done, we do this backwards, right? We usually start with the design of it, and then we kind of work back and go like, do you like this? Do you like this? Do we have the data to support this? As opposed to really understanding that there are fairly distinct audiences and definitely very specific purposes to design for. This is probably the biggest pitfall I see time and time again. And maybe, Jason, later you could talk about some of the pitfalls you see as you're talking about some of your techniques. But usually what we see is, one, a misunderstanding that not that there aren't different people in the organization, but different people in the organization really use and view the business in different ways fundamentally. So I would say the most common path is people in the operational space on the far right side using a lot of the analytics to create operational dashboards, like how many things are being produced, how many sales are we making on a given day, what's the foot traffic look like, how's our marketing spend look, all this kind of stuff. All of a sudden, there's a request to move that up to the executive level. And how do you do that, right? Like usually what happens is we start with make it pretty, right? And then the other problems sort of cascade from that. When really the most important design decision comes from understanding how do people view the business differently and what data do they need to get better visibility into the business. It's not just taking tactical information, very specific, as you see on the right side of the continuum there. And, by making it pretty, it automatically becomes more general, becomes more strategic focused, or it provides more context. That is by far the biggest misunderstanding that drives, I think, a lot of mostly failed efforts. So in a way, you have to get really good at kind of understanding how your organization, how people in your organization consume data. The next thing would be, and I started out my career in journalism. So this is a borrowing from if anyone's familiar with journalism, borrowing from the inverted pyramid of writing, which is you want to start with the biggest overview, the highest level type information, i.e., is the ship on fire, or are sales doing well, or whatever. And then you want to move into segments, like what are areas of topics of interest. And then below that, you can go details very, very deep. Again, what we typically see is backwards and inverted. Usually it's just details. And there might be some sort of smattering of some organization, but there is either a misunderstanding of what that particular person or role or department needs, or there's this assumption that people will, again, be able to, you might not understand it, but the people who are reading this, they must understand it. That's not exactly a great way to add value to your organization. A great way to add value to your organization is to organize the content, provide it for purpose. In UX, we call this a job to be done. What would I hire you and this dashboard to do? And then can you prioritize the content in such a way that it provides a nice logical outline? One easy way to do that is just to start very simply. Use a simple grid, put the most important stuff in the upper left part and the less prioritized information to the bottom, or the details to the bottom. In the same way, think about what might be, what feels like a 2D dashboard. Think of it in terms of 3D, in that the background, what we would call maybe the tertiary part of the dashboard, it sounds a little technical, but that should gain almost no attention at all. The second layer should be the area where you provide the context, which is give me the places where things will live, right? How will we organize the content? There's no actual data content in that layer. The content happens on the very top layer, right? That's where you need to put the actual information. And I'm sure, Jason, you've probably used this before, but we sometimes call it the squint test, right? Can you squint at something and go like, okay, what is still visible? Like what pops out? And I'll show you a quick example. Here's one we kind of did for a client that was just very, very straightforward. It was using their typefaces, their brand, their colors. The first attempts that they made, it was very hard to figure out what was important. If you follow those sort of simple techniques like we have here, you're already way ahead in the game, right? And so what we did here is we used, branding's very important. I think that's something we could do a whole, how to design for brand is something we could do a whole session on. But grouping things using a simple grid, if you squint at this, and this is this has a certain volume, this has a tone to it, right? It has a little bit of personality. This may not be right for what you're doing, or it might be perfect for what you're doing, but in this case, it's where am I? What can I know? What has changed? And then give me a little bit of context and help me get to the details. So we're actually using, in this case, content where you could roll over or click on any of these. And let's say we clicked on, see projections. Now I'm at the projections page, right? I've gone from a high level story to now I'm going to a topic of interest. And then, as they say, it's like details all the way down. And one of the things I've seen that doesn't require any technology at all, just requires, it's actually more of an editorial mindset. Like if you were creating a magazine for somebody that says, hey, we've got this article on projections, and here's what we're talking about today. There's two things that this does. It provides context and it explains maybe some things so that people don't have to keep a huge amount of information in their head. But two, it gives you the opportunity, if you're inclined, to add your own either commentary or frame what's happening on the page. That's something that I think people also underestimate, which is people could look at a chart and take away lots of different things from it. What we need is maybe people to guide and direct, right? Yeah, I hear what you're saying there, Sydney. There's more. I'm gonna let Jason maybe talk on some of those things, but yeah, we hear that loud and clear.
I'm just soaking them up.
Just soaking them up.
Soaking them up in the chat. I love it.
Hey, Jason and Chris, before we go too further down the rabbit hole here, I do want to call this out. Jason kind of makes a great point here, and it's something that I've always heard in the world of education, and now hearing it again, it's almost the same, right? What you talked a little bit about design and kind of an overview of that. We have a lot of new people joining us that may not be familiar with even the possibility of designing inside of Domo. And we are going to dive into the nuances of that. That's why Jason's here. That's why Chris is here, so they can go in and give you examples and show those off. But you talked a little bit about audiences, and I know I kind of waited too long to call this out, but what sort of context do you give folks that are also looking at, okay, this looks great on a this looks great on my Mac or on my Windows computer. I throw it up on a gigantic presentation on the projector. Everybody loves it. But, as we're thinking about our users, how many folks are actually going to be accessing that on mobile, and what sort of design considerations do you make when it goes from this very high definition MacBook to maybe an iPhone that's 7 inches in the palm of my hand?
Yeah, Jason, you want to take that?
It's a good question, and it was one of the things that was one of the top 10s that I considered. But I think we probably need to have like a repeat visit, Eddie, where we come back and we do some more tips on mobile. But there are a lot of things that exist on mobile, and I'd say that probably the number one is taking the time to go in there and look at the mobile view of your dashboard. Some of the new features that exist, like hiding specific cards from the content, right? Sometimes there are cards that work really well on desktop and then just like don't really land on mobile in some of the interactions. The filtering tools and like page filters on mobile work really, really well and kind of have that native tooling, whereas you might on desktop have those filters. Like you can see in Chris's example here, he has like the list of attorneys. On mobile, you can have that as a page filter. So they see attorney right there at the bottom, they tap it, then they get that same filter control, but it's more native integration. So you could hide that attorney card on the mobile device or in the mobile view and just prioritize the chart with those page filters on the page. So there's a few things that way, but I think the biggest one, I know like I fall into this trap all the time, is just not paying attention because I'm editing it on desktop. I see the desktop view. I'm, making sure that that's working. And then, I go and I'm on the go and somebody wants to talk to me about what I do or about Domo, and I go and show them my phone. I'm like, oh, I was working on this dashboard. I pull one up and it looks like hot garbage. For me, at least that's my opinion of it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's all because I just didn't take the time to like say, oh, I really want to make sure that all of these, the spacing and the layouts and the customization tools that are offered, I didn't take the time to make sure that those work. The other one is interactions on mobile, like changing the mobile interaction from the desktop one. Sometimes it makes sense to have it be the same as what you have on desktop. Other times it's like, hey, drill me to that card. Give me all of those, the slicers, the other controls that exist on the details view. So there's a lot of options here.
For sure. I think what I heard, Chris, he volunteered you guys to come back and do a mobile version of design. So
yeah, I heard that too.
That's what I heard.
I think I heard that too. Yeah.
I'll let you guys continue.
I'm just going to build on one thing that Jason said. What he talked about is absolutely correct, right? You have to be designing with mobile in mind, but Domo is there because we've thought about this, and so there are ways that you can optimally design your dashboards for mobile. But I would say it still starts with really organizing your content around purpose. That's when you do that. Whatever you do on mobile, it's at least going to be more accessible and understandable. But there are very specific mobile sort of considerations you want to take into effect. And I think you're right, Jason. You're going to have to get back here and do another one. So we'll see you next week, I guess. Yeah. Okay. There we go. So you've already got a fan.
Already got a sign. I've already got someone signed up. All right.
Yep. Already someone signed up. So one of the things that I see time and time again is, and this fits into designing with real intention around telling a story, is either providing context or not providing enough context. So there's an absence of context, or there's a misunderstanding of that, how do we make something look pretty, for lack of a better term, and actually tell a story. And I think one of the biggest misnomers is that there's somehow a trade-off, that smart use of color and design and context either makes things less interesting or too busy, or it's too difficult to do. And I'll give you an example right here. So we're all familiar with sort of gauges, right? We've seen these gauges. Great way to sort of show summary information and a true dashboard visualization, right? Like this is what we would expect when someone says dashboard. The problem here, I think, is when you look at this, first we'll do the squint test. What has the most visual weight? I would suggest it's this area, right? I don't know if you can see it, but this darker reddish orange area has the most weight. There's this little gray line that's kind of popped out that's somewhat confusing. But there's also no context that suggests how I would use this or what it's actually telling me. Is this sales today? I mean, that'd be great if we made $23 million today, but doubtful. Is it all time? There's certain assumptions there that create the chance for ambiguity, and you just don't want ambiguity. People have to work too hard. We could easily address that and actually add more information. I would suggest, I think it's actually easier to grok this and make more sense, and more importantly, feel more confident that the story that's being told here is something that could be used, as opposed to maybe sowing some doubt or confusion in the mind of the consumer of this information. So what did we do here? Well, I think if you run the squint test here, what pops out? It should be this green gauge, right? What you're seeing here is the element of greatest visual weight is actually the thing we haven't done. And it's not even the thing we haven't done. It's a completely arbitrary segment, right? Because our goal is here, and this is just a tail of the goal, right? It doesn't quite make sense. So yeah, you could highlight the gap if you want, or you just say, you know what, we're at 23 million. This is it. It's year to date. And this scale goes from 0 to 40. It's very simple. And I think it's important to design for what we might call at a glance, or what psychologists might call system 1 versus system 2 thinking. I know it sounds a little techie, but what it means is our brain works in 2 different modes. We think both in a glance and what we might call intuitive mode, right? Like, what can I know instantaneously? And then we think in system 2, which is analytical mode. I think, unfortunately, we design a lot of our tools to only work in system 2 analytical mode, and that's slow thinking versus fast thinking. So the idea behind some of the design recommendations are to support more system 1 thinking that guides you to good system 2 thinking. I know that might sound a little techy, but that's how we think about it. So here's an example. What does this mean, right? Like, this is actually year over year comparisons. Well, there's a story in there somewhere, and maybe the story I would think would be, what's the year with the greatest amount of rise? And it was this year, or sorry, the 2001 year, right? You can see that you don't have to give everyone everything to tell a story. In fact, that can really get in the way. You can choose a story as an entry point into the rest of it and let them explore, right? That, again, is that inverted pyramid type approach. I would also say here, I'm going to go back to that one. I would also say that one of the big misses we see is that gray is by far the most important color in data visualization, and it's hardly ever used. And it's important for this reason. It allows you to layer information in a way that makes it more grokkable by people. I thought I'd throw this up. I know it's a little confusing, and there's some debate as to how useful something like this is, but I think the important thing is awareness, which is there are many different stories you can tell, and there are many different ways to represent data visually. I think the joke was at the start, someone put up like, yeah, it's pie charts and bar charts or something like that. And that's absolutely true. We do a lot of that. However, there's more to it, and it's up to you to kind of figure out, given the purpose and the person you're designing for, what is the best visual? Because the visual is a representation of data. You can see, like over here, for example, if you look on the left, I don't know if you can see my little mouse right there, but it says, filled progress multi-value gauge, and that's a numerical summary. That was, something we were using as a high-level generalization. You want summary type visualizations at that level. What you probably don't want is, potentially is, a giant scatter plot. That may not be the thing. It could be, but it depends again on the use and the person. A lot of times we see this a ton is tables. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Andrea. A lot of times, I think tables is by far our most popular visualization. Tables are great, but tables are ultimately exploration visualizations. They are really there to help you explore. Oh, all right. I love this. All right, we've got some real fans. I think we've discovered our audience here, Jason. We found our people.
I just can't believe that we're making fun of pie charts on the week of Pi Day. That just seems like
it does seem wrong, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say to some of the comments, this is a chart I definitely review every so often just to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. And there's a lot of different ways to represent data, and especially with the new tools, like things you can do in Domo and with Domo bricks, you can create lots of different kinds of visualizations. So that's great. Creativity is great, but sometimes you just need to know, hey, what's the best practice, right? That's wonderful, Bob. I'm going to close up my part here with just a few slides about color, and I would love to go super deep on color, and we'll probably do that at some point in the future, but color is very difficult, and it's difficult from the very bottom all the way to the top. From the very bottom, I mean, we're all familiar with an RGB color picker, right? We all end up here at some place. This is a terrible tool and to use for creating colors and for creating palettes, but it's what we have, and I think it's hard to look past it. I just put a little chart here, and I know this is also very techy, but I just want to give you guys an appreciation of just how difficult this is. When you're looking at color and you're using an RGB color space, and let's say, and you'll see this like in our color pickers, we're building, we've built the new color picker, and we're building new color tools for like branding and creating palettes. It's all based on a lot of this research, but you'll see one of the problems here is the color space that you're dealing with, and what you're looking at is the maximum saturated color based on a brightness and hue. We sometimes call that saturation chroma, and you can think of it as sort of like the vibrancy or the energy of the color. And I think, and we actually created our own sort of plot here showing the maximum chroma available. And you'll see that there's these weird sort of peaks and valleys to the RGB color. It doesn't mean your eye can't see more than this, but what you can actually represent on a dashboard is this. This is every color at its most energetic. What you'll see here, I think, is might answer some of the questions that maybe you guys have struggled with Domo and our color palette, which is, why don't you have yellow? Well, the reason we don't have yellow is, if you see right here, yellow is very vibrant up here. No other colors really are, and it has no real vibrancy down here. So there's no such thing, at least in RGB color, as a super deep, rich, energetic gold. That doesn't exist, right? You get sort of muddy browns, but you notice blue is available there. I don't think that's an accident why you typically see a lot of corporate colors using blue. You're seeing a lot of corporations using more of these kind of colors, like the indigo. Airbnb, has like the sort of the pink. Obviously reds, the deep Coke reds, those are in there. So the reason I show you this is not to test you on it, but to let you know that it's complicated. So if you're trying to create a harmonious set of palettes, it's not as easy as you might suspect. And I'll just show you that with adding one more complication, which is how our eyes perceive color. So the reason, we're also talking about doing, light backgrounds with very little visual noise, and then a middle background that has very little visual noise, and then using accent colors, is because of things like this, is that your eyes have evolved to perceive color in a very context sensitive manner. So Jason, I'm going to test you. Here it goes. A versus B. Which one of these squares is brighter?
It's a trick question, Chris. They're the same.
You are correct. So, right? But we've evolved to say, like, that must be, because it's in a shadow, there's a context, right? It's like, oh, that's a lighter thing in a darker shadow.
Hey, Chris, before we move on, I want to get to Jennifer's comment here, because I do think it's an important one.
Oh yeah.
About accessibility. Jennifer Wagner asked, does Domo have accessibility built in for colorblind or low vision users? Certain colors need to be used, color contrast needs to be sufficient, etc. Can you speak to that just for a few moments before we move on?
Sure. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no sort of magic button we can push for that. So what we are doing, and what we have been doing, and Jason, feel free to jump in on this one, but we're working on updating our design system for better accessibility. So making sure that there is a higher level of access that fits web accessibility standards like AA. We may have to add something that, if somebody wants to switch and go, I want AAA, meaning I want the most contrast, the most accessible type visual settings. One of the things that we have done is we've actually built this into our brand kit color palette tool, meaning you can create your own palette from your corporate colors, from your brand colors. And we have built in color, well, we call it color vision deficient. We don't really use color blind anymore. We use color vision deficiency, so that you can see what your palette looks like for people who might be suffering from either temporary or permanent vision issues. So it's definitely a very important aspect to a lot of our design thinking, and I think you'll be seeing a lot of improvements in that. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Jason.
Yeah, I think, this is the balance, right, between customization and accessibility, right? Everyone wants to have yellow and like different colors, and we allow a lot of customization with color rules and charts. So what I'll say is, like, a lot of the smart defaults that you get when charting, as it relates, like the UI on dashboards, anything that's like embeddable, those things are, I think AA is like our minimum standard. But you can do things to a chart that make it less accessible, right? You can make adjustments. And so that is one of those things you just have to take into consideration as you're designing. We try to do our best to make that possible. And we've definitely explored different ideas around, similar to how a user can choose what language they want to see Domo in, from our different locales, like how they want to see data. There's been a lot of discussions about, enabling a sort of locale situation for people who have different things, but that's just one of those things. Anyway, get in the comments, right? Throw it out there in the dojo.
There's definitely more coming on that. I mean, it's top of mind for us, and we've worked on some things that I think are actually pretty cool around that. But and I mean, I would throw another one out there, which is we don't look at color vision deficiency as just something any individual has. I mean, projecting things through a really terrible projector in a conference room is creating a color vision deficiency problem, right? So there are many other kind of applications. Mobile environments, you might want super high contrast because it's bright or noisy or a lot of vibration or things like that. So more to come on that for sure. I'll just wrap up with just a few more just to show how applying some of these ideas around color and layering of information can help even the worst case scenarios. So this is one that we've created, and it's a bit hard to kind of decipher here, but anyone who's familiar with like Edward Tufte, one of his principles, I think, is one of least visual difference. And that's one I've always gravitated to, which is if you think of like color on a speedometer, it might be like 0 to 100. Like, so 0 would be white and maybe 100 would be black. And that represents range of contrast you can have between things. Usually what happens is we kind of either step on the gas or we step on the brake. So usually people design things with a lot of contrast, but that contrast, as we talked about before with those layers, is kind of throws you off, right? It kind of pulls your visual attention in areas that don't necessarily require it. So I thought this would be a good example, which is if we could just use color, could we begin to group things and layer things in such a way that we have we have a top layer like these lines, and then we have the context for those things without actually changing any of the data, which I suggest we should, right? I'm not saying this is a great chart, but what I'm saying is you can just apply basic principles, not change anything else around color. So principles of color and principles of design, and at least mitigate things in a pretty meaningful way, I would suggest. The same thing is, it can be applied to just making color, that's a little slow, using color in a consistent way. A lot of times people will say color has meaning, right? Like red means danger and green means good. Depends what country you're in, right, in your background. But what's important here is it's not necessarily easy in that sort of quick thinking, right? That system one thinking to go like, I can see the relationship between all these things. These look kind of the same, but this looks a little different because we've introduced another color. Is this all the same data, right? Or not? So let's show like, what can we do here? Well, I would suggest we could, sorry. Oh, wow. I apologize on this one. So this is one of those transitions that apparently we didn't fix, but here, I gotta go back. Oh my goodness. The last slide killing me. Well, I'll just leave it with this one. Right here, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we've got SQL, not SQLs, SAO. So we got stages of pipeline, right? Just make it easy for people to see the big patterns, right? Like I think it's much easier. And you'll also notice that we're using lower contrast colors. We're trying to reduce the visual noise. And then instead of using the same colors here as here, just because they match, because this is an aging sort of visual, we have like fresh to older, right? Things fading off, right? So you can actually use color even in a metaphorical sense, which I think is, often overlooked. So with that, and I apologize for these transitions, this is awful, but remember, it's not really about design. Great design comes from really thinking about the stories to tell and who you're telling them to. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Jason, who's going to tell you some of the techniques, like how to actually do some of this stuff in Domo. All you, Jason.
Okay.
I will stop sharing.
Thanks, Chris. Cool. Well, I just been, following the comment thread. Got some variables, some colors, some questions about bricks. I'm going to show a couple of things right now, and I will say that what I am doing in these dashboards, not all of them are going to be perfect examples of everything that Chris said, but they're pretty good, right? So, give me a little bit of leeway here, right? But there's some really cool stuff. If you follow the guidelines that Chris just went over and those principles as you're building out your dashboards, that's going to be first. And there's a lot of research and things you can do. What I'm going to give you is 10 practical tricks and tips and hacks, we might call them, right? I know we've got some dashboard experts here in the chat. And so, some of these are going to be familiar to you already, I suspect, but some of you are newer, and hopefully everybody gets at least one that they like. So let's jump into it. At least some of these hopefully will be new. So first off, let's talk about overall styling discoverability, right? We're going to move from the top and we're going to dive deeper into specific adjustments. And I'm sorry, some people say working with me is kind of like drinking through the fire hose. I'm just going to go fast and open it up, throw your questions in there and we'll catch to it. So let's start with a solid foundation, right? Overall styling, discoverability, starting with a nice solid foundation to build the rest of our dashboard on. Obviously doing all the things that Chris talked about, getting that content right, knowing your audience, putting all that together. But first tip, backgrounds, keep them clean, right? Good background is going to help your content either stand out or it's going to make it distracting, right? Either it's distracting or it's helpful. So avoid complex background images. You want those things that are going to keep all the details, the textures, right? Keep those on the edges where it can add to the dashboard without really taking away. You get a lot of flexibility with card backgrounds if you've got a nice solid center section with kind of those details on the side. So a couple quick examples here, right? This is one. When in doubt, throw it out, right? Don't use a background if you aren't confident about it. But here's another one. This one, we've got kind of the sales on the side, right? Got that highlight at the top. But the main content area, whether those cards have backgrounds or not, we're good. Here's one that has a little bit more texture. You can see now we've got to add those background colors for the cards. But it's got a nice, little branding on the side. Here's another one. Here's a couple I'll go through really quickly. You can see on these ones, we've got a mix of backgrounds on the cards and hidden backgrounds on the cards. Just some nice textures. You can use a tool like Figma, which is free for individuals to just go on. Just add a little box of color and throw some blur on it or a gradient, right? So that you've got like a nice center area. This one has like that texture is kind of more on the top, which is another example. It's like really useful. Don't worry, we'll dive into some more of these dashboards. I know several of you are asking about specific examples. Here's a little dark mode for you, right? If you want a darker one. Again, the original photo was a little bit more texture deep, but we're going to push it out. So the tool is, it's a design tool for screens. It's called Figma, Figma. And you can, obviously there's like paid and enterprise accounts, and Domo uses that as a screen design tool for UX designers, but you can go in, like my wife went in and signed in and got an account to go and manipulate an image the other day. So it's really easy. So a couple quick examples of those dashboard backgrounds. Here's a few just to see without the content. Here's a few other ones, right? This one with the blue, you've got kind of this textured pattern. All of them interesting. Again, you see a lot of standard things, keep them solid, get a little branding, a little texture on the sides. Number two, navigation.
I would say, Jason, one of the things that you have to fight. Yeah, one of the things you have to fight against oftentimes is people who don't really design a lot of dashboards tend to go right to the background, like create the craziest background. And I would also say, if you think your dashboard is boring, maybe your data is boring. So ways to kind of, have
keep
different
that content king, right? That
keep content's king. Yeah.
Yep. You want people to read the dashboard, not be like reading your background, right?
Yep.
So, okay. Tip number 2, navigation, help keep your content organized. So rather, you've got this layout, you've got all the things, you've got requests from an executive or from the team. Hey, we need to have all this information. And this is that scope creep, right? And that there's a video game reference that some of you may know that people tell me about all the time, the Katamari, right? It's rolling forward, just like absorbing things as it goes. Sometimes that's what dashboards can turn into, right? We just keep adding more stuff until basically it's just this endless scrolling document. So rather than trying to cram all of that into one dashboard, let's figure out how am I going to divide this across multiple pages, make it easier to consume. And I'm going to show you some really good examples of how you can improve, how you can put that into your dashboard. But this is really useful too for things like page filters, right? Because all the page filters can all relate to the content on the page rather than having a bunch of filters that relate to different sections of the page and trying to help people understand like how to make that work. Because all of it's relevant to the specific set of filters that you see. So here's a quick example of navigation. You can see, go back really quick. So here we've just got some notebook cards up at the top. And we're using card interactions. I'll show you how to do that really quickly up at the top. But you've got shipping performance, design operations, product performance, right? Down at the bottom, you can see, Chris mentioned this in one of his, but like underneath that chart, you can see shipping performance or delivery performance. That's super useful. Here we've got another one that's got kind of a nice summary at the top again, forecast model, internal, external reporting, really like you cannot miss, right, where it is to go for that content that you're looking for. It can be really useful. Another one, yes, table of contents, right? You can have kind of this table of contents page up here at the top. Here's all my different sections. And these are things that when we have consulting, design consulting engagements with customers, like this is like number one thing that gets asked for is to build out landing pages, really.
Yeah. Jason, can you go back, Jason, one slide? Yes. Is that possible? I just want to call something out because Chris is in the old journalism school, as kind of I grew up in as well. Is there any consideration on above the fold here? We got a lot of wasted space in these giant cards here. Forecast model could have tightened that up just a
no doubt. Not a good background either. Like I'm almost embarrassed, right?
I just thought we'd call that out. Hilarious. I'm adding a little brevity to the session. I'll let you get back to it.
It's good. It's good. I did see a question about navigation with Domo everywhere. That's a good question. Let me show you. So how this one, specifically when I do this one right here, this is a notebook card, right? So you can go in and change that text. Those are just images that we paste in. I'll get to that in just a second. But you can go into the content and choose the interaction. And if the interaction is open any content, I feel like that might work in everywhere. But I would have to, like, I don't want to say something that's not true. So I'm not certain. If you do a URL, it will definitely work. But the question would be whether it would work the way that you want it to or that you expect, right? So definitely you can use that linking. You can actually go to different types of content. Like you can go to a card. So you could have one of those call outs up there that like drills into the details of a card that has, you know, slicers or filter controls on it and has really great drill paths. Or even to a custom app. I have one dashboard that I created for our design team that it drills to a custom app. So lots of really good stuff that you can do with that. Okay. One more thing is you can use DDX bricks. So you can add navigation with a brick. So you can use a brick to power any navigation. If you want to try that out, you can go to the App Store, search for DDX links. It's a good starting point. DDX links takes you to this page here. And if you get that app, I'm not going to show all of the configuration options here, but basically you have that whole gray area using links in your app. That can be your header section. And then you can create your own drop-down menus and different links that way. So that's another really useful one that we use all of the time. Like in engagements and things. Before Bricks, we built custom apps to help people do navigation because you just want to have a really specific custom set of interactions. So if you are using everywhere as well, you can do that with actual pages.
To Chris's question, Jason, sorry to interrupt, but that works with Domo. That should work just fine with Domo everywhere.
Yeah. Great. There you go. Yeah. So
and I would say it's come up a few times, but I would I would say this is actually a really, really great technique that Jason's calling out, because, you know, we are working on some improvements to navigation, but I would say, you know, why not just put the navigation within the page? You know, it's already focused. That's where people are looking. Don't make them go hunt for it. I know that we're looking at adding better, easier to create, more usable navigation features within other parts of the product. So we realize that's an important part, but you can definitely use it today, you know, in creating a better dashboard experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. We're going to power through. You can obviously use the brick to make a header. This one, I talked about images really quickly. So adding icons and images, right? On one of the other ones, it was like a full image card that you were using to click on. That's what the header here, product performance, that's just an image created in Figma, dropped right into the dashboard. But a lot of you are here saying, Jason, icons, I'm not a designer. I'm not made of icons, right? How do I do icons? So quick tip here, material design icons and phosphoricons.com. Write those ones down. The reason I'm suggesting these is I'll show you, this is material design icons. You can go there. It literally has thousands, I think. You find one, you just go in here, pick which one you want to do. You can open the advanced PNG export. If you don't have a design tool, you can actually customize these, right? I'm gonna go set a color. You can set a background color here if you wanted to have one, and then flip it, do whatever you want, and make that thing, download that image, and then boom, upload it to your dashboard, you're done. So really easy. Phosphor icons, like same exact thing, just a different look. They've got a whole bunch of different families. You can actually change different families. If I want that airplane icon right there, I'm just gonna come over here. You either download that PNG or you can change the color, right? From being a white icon, we're gonna change it to be black. And that'll work on the dashboard too. So both of those are really, really handy. Other tools like Unsplash, if you need a background image or something, it's worth looking at. But both of these are really handy. You can paste them right into a notebook card. So if you take a look at these right here, where it says shipping performance at the top, that little arrow icon.
Yeah, like a little paper airplane or whatever that is there.
All of those are just PNGs, right? They're just images. So
you just paste that right in there.
Yep, you just paste them right in. So those are really, really handy. Okay, now questions about white space on dashboards. So if you've got a lot of content or really detailed content, changing your dashboard display mode from fixed width to auto width, this can really give you that more content on screen, especially people who have really wide monitors, right? If you're using a desktop, like I'm on an ultra wide monitor right now, this is really handy. So let me show you how to do that. So if you go into, you can see like we've got a table with some content here. It's got this padding on the sides, which is great sometimes. Other times though, you want to see more of the table. So display options, auto width. And now this will resize. Again, this is kind of a normal size dashboard. Or a normal size screen. But if you were to look at this on like a larger screen, ultra wide monitor, this thing will just stretch to fit. So we've just gotten rid of all of that padding on the sides. Yes, it does work with embed dashboards as well, which is awesome. Because then you can control the container in the embedded location, which is really useful.
So it's really more of like a reactive.
Yep. Yes, exactly. Yeah. It'll scale. Mm-hmm. In terms of spacing around cards, between cards, like stay tuned. Not in this presentation, right? But we are aware. So that's start with a solid foundation. You get those things, you're going to remove distractions, right? You're going to help people navigate, find stuff that you're looking for. Really useful. If you've got a really data dense page, go full width. All right, we're going to go quick because I've only got so much time. Let's dive a little deeper into specific content. So one, more dynamic KPIs.
Hey, Jason, before you turn into the micro man,
yeah.
Remember the micro machines guy? I got a smile out of Chris on that one. Did you see it? Remember that dude? He was the fastest talker in the West. All right, so I know a lot of folks, we have 5 minutes remaining before the end of the session, but here's the deal. We don't want to, I don't want you to have to like have an aneurysm trying to get through all of this. So what we're going to do, just go at your own pace. I know a lot of folks are probably, hey, you said an hour, what's going on? This session will be recorded. If you want to go back and watch the last 5 minutes or the last 10 minutes, whatever you miss at the end of the hour, because you're jumping on another call. We're not going to put a hard stop on this right at the end of the hour, even though we should, but it's recorded, which is great, which is why I love doing these sessions, because time no longer exists. The old Eddie, who worked in radio and TV, would have said master control is hitting the button at 6:00 Eastern time. That doesn't happen these days, right? The internet can live as long as we'd like it to live. So we're going to let you go a little long if we need to go a little long, people that have to jump off. But I'm not telling you to jump off yet. I do want you, before the end of the hour, you did tease a little bit.
I did tease
things. You tease something. So I want those people to at least get a nugget of what that might be, and then they can come back and watch the recording. How about that for a tease?
Okay. You got it. You got it, Eddie. All right, let's go through these quick. So don't fear the chart properties on KPIs. So what are we talking about, right? This page right here has several KPIs. You've got them on the top with the 5.24 million in sales, the units, right? There's those. We also have the notebook cards here that have built into the text. And then there's the summary card at the bottom. Those two at the top and bottom, those are actually the same card. So if you drill in here to Analyzer and you look at these, inside of General, there's a lot of different layout options. If you've never tried these out, this is the multi-value card or the multi-value columns card. There are a lot of different options in here. Just by changing that one thing on the layout, you can get a lot of different looks and feels, which can really easy way to get interesting looking KPIs without a lot of work. Dive into those chart properties, right? And make a couple of those changes. You can change the colors. You can change the symbol. Here I'm using a plus, but you can use triangles. You can use all kinds of different shapes for the variants, which is a really great way to add that context that Chris was talking about during his presentation. So here you can see I've got purple and pink. Maybe not like the best options, but some people talked about using red versus green, and that can be a problem for those who have with some color blindness. You can change them, right? Make them blue, like do whatever you want with those. So really useful ways, or brand them, right? Have the daily units, whatever. You can line those up with types of data, right? If we're talking about sales versus expenses, things like that. So another really useful one to do. 6, style those filters and other controls. Go back to January's live stream. They did a really good job talking about curated and interactive Domo dashboards with dashboard filters, filter views. There's a ton of really great tips there. I don't want to get too much into that, but because they did a good job. And so I would say go back and watch that one, post the link in here. We aren't going to go into those today. What I am going to go into is you can really customize your filters and the look and feel for a specific dashboard. So over here, you can see we got them squared up. We're using a nice blue color that matches the rest of our themes. How we set that up in Analyzer, if you drive in here, down at the bottom, we have our filters area. And you can pick from all these different ones. You can make that checkbox, radio buttons, right? All of these different filter options are really powerful. And then if you go again into the chart properties, you can do lots with centering those, making them a column, lining them up in a row, going full width versus regular size, increasing the size. Get in there and just try out a couple of those different options that are in here. You can see now that looks totally different. And it could be just another really useful way. I'll show you an example here of this. Has a lot of those, right? We got a lot of filter cards on this page with the different slicers. I really like this one though, because you can set different colors. So all of these, as you hover over them, you'll see they go green, which is really cool. And it matches the theme of this dashboard. So you can make those, it's really easy. Even the checks in the check boxes will go green as well. So you can really customize all of that using the chart properties. I'm hearing in the chat, you guys are getting ahead of me, right? That brings us to our next tip. There are a lot of controls here, right? And mo filters, mo problems, right? Use a drop down. So all of these, sometimes if you got too many and you want to be able to fit more on the page, go and use a dropdown. It's a really useful way. So really quickly to show what that looks like, this is all using those same slicers. Down here, we've got the exact same filtering capabilities, but it's all inside of a dropdown. So you've got all the options here, the different materials, the different products. And it's actually smaller on the page. I've got room for these summary numbers at the top with the spark lines. It's really cool. So if you want to convert one of those existing ones to a dropdown, super easy. Go into Analyzer, go over to the chart types again, come down to the filters, and then just choose that dropdown selector right there. This is, again, super useful. And I really like, here's a little tip, using the default select text. That lets it so you can say, hey, I don't want to have the label. Right now it says all materials by default. And then as somebody goes and filters on it, they can pick a specific one. So really getting in there and like changing the default text, just little things that are going to help people understand and see those drop downs and what to do with them. So yeah, much more refined package, gives you a little bit more room. Jumping on, this is what those look like. Take that time, add those default text values. Had to sneak one in here, 7.5. Somebody brought up variables, right? Bonus round for those tricky filters that don't work with a dropdown or with a segment. I'll show you a quick example. On this dashboard, I've got a variable control up here, search projects. It's a variable control, not a filter dropdown. You can see I've got a projects table. If I type in right here something like chat, I know those in there. You see it just filtered projects to projects that contain chat. So this is a great way to do things like early, like a starts with, right? If you've got repetitive data that all starts with a number, ends with a number, and you want somebody to be able to filter to a value without setting it as a separate column. Let me show you really quick how to do that. You can come in, we're filtering on a beast mode to true, right? Why we're doing that is inside of the beast mode. If we go to the beast mode, you can see the actual formula that we did. And again, somebody on this call could probably do this better than I have. But you're going to create a variable. I'll just make a new one that is like the one that I created before. So I just make one that's like search projects v2. So this one, all it is we're saying it's text. We're going to set the default value to be blank and then add a text input as the control. So that's what's going to show up on the dashboard. If we go back over to the calculation, you can see in here, it's just a case statement that says if it's blank, then it's true. Otherwise, put it into our concat, which is just saying, make it a like, which just means does it contain that value? So now you can see all of our projects, does it contain? And that's really good if I'm searching like comments, right? Or things like that. In this case, we'll type in review. It's going to filter to all the ones that contain reviews. So anyway, little hack there. Another one that's like really useful. You can do a lot of that with different filters or page filters as well. But if you want to put it on the dashboard, make it a variable. So lots of cool ways to show variables. I know that there was a whole nother webinar on variables that was done. So go check that out. Definitely worth looking into. Yeah, so super functional drop downs. They do lack context though. So if you want to do another way to filter, make your filters more visual with a tree map chart. So this is, Willis shared some things about having this be very context heavy. If you only have a few categories, like our pie charts conversation, if you've got 8 of them, it's probably not going to work. But if you've only got a couple of options, you want to show something like what percentage of our stuff is in this bucket versus the other bucket. You can use a tree map chart really effectively there. So right here, we've got, we want to see a breakdown between our local and our international. And you can see it has percentages based on that. One click and it filters the entire page. So that's a really great way to show the context of like, hey, here's a category and I want to be able to filter on that category, but also give people the context. So here's another page. Here we've got a few more options. So it had to take up a little bit more space. It's not quite as concise as like a drop-down control. But right away, you can immediately see that Erica has the most projects of anyone, right? A drop-down control doesn't give you that. And it doesn't tell you how many more she has than anybody else. And that's what this does. It's really useful. So tree maps, one of my favorite things to drop in, sometimes takes a little bit of explanation for people to know how to use it. But
that's something you could put a little text, right? You could put a little helpful, hey, yeah.
And one thing with the helpful text, like you can add descriptions to cards to the dashboard now in the chart options. And we'll get to that one really quickly. But we could go over, I could show people how to make a good tree map. The main feature that you want to do here is we're going to, in Analyzer, I've already got this one set up. It's in Pine Funnel tree map, but the biggest things you can do is add labels with percentages and things are really, really useful. And then go in and hide the legend. This is really useful. Give your hover text some nice things, like give it the percentages and things like that will be very handy. And then make sure you go in, like you can hide the background now at this point back on the dashboard. So that's another way, makes it really slim and they'll look a lot better if you have, especially at different sizes, right? So that one's a really useful one. If you change the display settings, there's the title and description. Those are really handy. So if you have the white background, then it's a little bit more padded out. This one works really well, especially if you hide the legend. It's really useful. So a good
yeah,
one.
and we have more padding improvements coming.
Yeah,
which we're, as designers, we're all very excited about.
Yeah. Okay, 9, make text work for you. So display options and smart text. Really quickly, we talked a little bit about dynamic text for KPIs. Those are really useful. Let me just show really quickly in the chart properties, right? Display settings, you can show titles and descriptions, right? In this case, deliveries is sort of unnecessary because we have it right above. So we can turn it off and just have multiple charts. That's going to allow those to stack up really nicely. This one here, you can see if you haven't used smart text yet, if you change the card title, we've got the default text. And then we can have, this is using filters. So as you apply filters, this one's using the date grain. As you come in here and we apply a filter to this chart, instead of being across all countries, I guess save it. And then as I click on these, right, it's going to update that in the text. So this is a really great way to add visual interest to your charts, especially if you're using something like a filter view, right? People can go and pick a filter view and then it's going to update all the charts. It's just adding that context that you really need. So if you haven't tried that one out, super, super useful and very handy. Okay. Last one, tables with a little sneak peek. We could probably do a whole conference on tables and table design, right? So I'm going to give a couple of things, not a lot,
Sure.
and a little bit of a sneak, but they really bring a lot of functionality to your dashboards. So I'll show you really quickly right here. We talked a little bit about using dynamic text, right? And those other things, but in tables, making a few adjustments to the text is going to be really helpful. So we'll edit this table. You can see my first column is a really sort of lame column name, right? Like product name. So if you haven't seen this one, click on the column, you can change the data label and give this kind of an alias. This really cleans up charts and dashboards and data tables really quickly. So that one's really useful. Another one is date formats. You can see launch date, like all of the dates are in 2023. It's not that helpful. So if we go in and we change the date format and you go down to custom, you can type in exactly what you want that date to look like. So in this case, I'm just going to say, hey, I want it to be like the month and the day. And now all of those are just going to be really easy.
Yeah, without having to write a beast mode.
Yeah, no beast mode required. But you could, right? Have done that.
Yeah, you could if you want. You really love it.
way simpler, right? Just make a really quick change to how that displays. Works really well on charts and things as well. So aliasing columns, adjusting the date format, that can do a lot for the readability of a table for sure. Let's talk about styling those really quick. So one option, conditional formatting, right? That's a huge tool. I've got that in this dashboard right here. So there's a normal table. We did a couple of things to that one. This table, though, has some conditional formatting, right? Tells us when we're over budget. Again, get into those chart properties, right? You can add color rules to say it's like above or below 100%. If you're looking at this table and thinking, that table doesn't look like a table that I could make in Domo, little sneak peek here, right? Here's another one that's another table that we did, just changing one chart property, say wrap text, right? You can get a different thing. And then here's another one, just making those smaller and then changing the fills and the backgrounds, lots of different options there. Let me show, this is our sneak. So in this one, what we're doing, I'll go in and edit this. We're actually getting a lot with border customizations, which is one of the things that if you come to Domopalooza here in 2 weeks, You can see more stuff about this and some other things. But if you look at this, we've got all these border options that we can go and configure. We can change the colors of specific borders, remove borders. That's why you're seeing those like clean lines where there's no vertical rules in between. Definitely try the color as heat map options on your table if you want. You can see it'll like automatically color things in specific columns, and you can change those colors as well. And then that allow text to wrap that we saw on that other dashboard is really handy. And setting row heights. And if you look at like the fonts in this as well, the text on the header is like a little bit bigger, a little bit thinner. So some really cool stuff to see there. But this one, changing the subtotal label, really, really handy, right? Because now we get this annual budget for. So just lots of little things you can do. Just get into those chart properties, try it out. Like, don't be afraid.
And when is that going to be available, Jason? Do you know? Is it going to be?
You should come in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
To Domopalooza and attend the stream.
Attend.
There
might be some other things that show up on that day too. So
yeah, there will definitely be more things that show up on that day. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to show you this one, right? But yeah, you can do a lot with like being able to change the borders, right? Like look how clean that is in between the items. Yeah, a little thing, but I knew that this was the right audience. So there you go, 10 tricks for more beautiful and usable dashboards.
Well done. Well done. Lots more to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you already have, you've got our friend Nicholas here that says, "Come on, Chris, give us more." Right? Like,
yeah, that was the only one we got approval for.
Give you a little nugget there, right? I absolutely am just in awe. So many of these things are just applicable everywhere, right? The design pieces. I love we start out a little bit higher level, then we bounced into kind of diving deep right into the tool. I think that's why you come to these sessions, which we have absolutely enjoyed having. Both Jason and Chris, let's hear it for them in the chat. I can't keep up with
thanks,
it anymore.
Jason. That was a tour de force right there.
It absolutely was. You guys were absolutely fantastic. Before we end this session, I would be remiss if I didn't promote our next virtual meetup where you get stuff just like this. Our data science team is taking over the virtual meetup. You can register by scanning that QR code. We obviously have thrown it in the chat multiple times, but we can do that once again to make sure that you can have the direct register link if you don't have your phone on you really quickly to scan that QR code. Amazing stuff, guys. Obviously, we went over by about 12 minutes. Hopefully, people can come back and watch this recording. We had a lot of folks stay with us.
Eddie, I got a question in the chat.
Oh, let's do it.
Want me to answer it? I can answer it. Hang on.
If you've got time, I don't want to rush you out of here.
I got time. If people want to see it, let's see. Really quickly, people asked about tables and subtotals. I'm going to show here. I don't know if everybody noticed. It was in there, right? But we've got a ranking here. This is not a beast mode. I'm just ranking things large to small. So this is one that I know people care about. And then another one you can see here. We've got our aggregation. We also have our total subtotal aggregation. So this is the average of the average, right? We could change that though to something else like the sum of averages. If we wanted to do that, we could definitely do it. Oh dear. And you can see how that happens. So anyway, come in 2 weeks. There's always more to show, but there you go. Hopefully that answers the questions, Lilia, and I think somebody else asked that as well. So I don't know if I was allowed to show that one, but it was in the chart, so we're showing it.
It's there.
It's gonna be on
There'll be more.
It's gonna be on YouTube forever, Jason.
It's on YouTube forever. You're gonna keep inviting me back, right? Chris is
You can come back anytime. If we get all the nuggets from you, these users are going to go nuts for you for the next 3 weeks. Guys, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd be remiss if I didn't have my good friend Mark back on here, as well as Anna Yardley, who was like, I'm just man in the chat. Eddie, do not throw me on here. There she is. Appreciate that. Anna did go ahead. We'd love your feedback on this session. We continue to try to improve these month to month so that they're valuable. We know we went a little long today. Don't kill us too bad on the feedback form for that. Anna will continue to post that Qualtrics form and survey into the session. So make sure you grab that link and provide us some feedback. Chris, Jason, I can't say enough, man. This has been incredibly awesome. Obviously, thank you to Mark and Anna for manning the chat, and to all of you for joining us on this other on another virtual March meetup. I am stumbling with words because I'm just amazed at how awesome this was. The engagement was off the charts.
Yeah, thank you for the invite.
Yeah,
this was really fun and just an amazing amount of participation. You guys weren't joking. You said this was a pretty engaged audience.
Right. Yeah.
I think we need to give away some stuff though.
Let's do it. Do you have do you have winners for me?
I mean, I feel like it's only fair to give a pair to this good friend of ours.
B-Rad.
So engaged during the entire experience. So congrats. You are winner number 1. And Sydney, I know you're saying it was worth staying up for. I don't know where you're at. I'm guessing we're gonna have to ship these across the pond, as we say, but you are winner number 2. So Eddie and Anna will take care of it. Thanks again for coming, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. Thanks again, everybody. Join us in April for our next community